All right. Welcome to folks who are joining us. My name's Cassandra, and I'm here as Densho's development manager and have the privilege and joy of working with our history keepers. We'll be getting started soon, so just make yourself comfortable. We are just getting set up and giving folks time to arrive. But for those who have joined us already, thank you for being here. And we encourage you to introduce yourself in the chat, name, where you're joining from, anything you want to share about yourself and your interest in Densho's work and Japanese American history. But even just your name and where you're joining from is great. We're happy to have you here and great to see who's in the room. So we'll get started in just a bit, but happy to have everyone here. Okay, it looks like we've got most of us here, and I see folks introducing themselves in the chat. No need to be shy, just a quick hello. We appreciate hearing from you if you're able to and feel comfortable to. So thankful that you're all here, and more than anything, just a very heartfelt thank you from all of us at Densho for your support and partnership. We really, as a community-driven nonprofit, appreciate and rely on the support of all of our donors. So thank you for being our partners in preserving history, and thank you for spending your morning with us. So we'll go ahead and get started. We are here with some of our amazing Densho team members who will be sharing about our Koseki retrieval program and translation services. So I will pass it to them to introduce themselves, but just a quick overview of our time together. One, to let folks know we are recording this webinar just to have, if you want to access it again, can't remember something we said, you'll be able to see the recording, but also for folks who can't make it at this time. I know a few people told me they'd love to be here, but had appointments. So we'll be recording this so that this is available afterwards. We encourage you to add questions in the chat or in the Q&A anytime. We're going to open with some brief presentation from Caitlin and Naoko just to kind of help explain, what is Koseki, what has Densho been doing, what are some of the programs and priorities we've been moving forward. But really most of this time is to hear from you all, any questions. This is our time. We don't always get a lot of kind of small group direct conversation time with our supporters. So really the floor will be yours to ask any questions, offer any comments for our Koseki team. So I will go ahead and pass it to Caitlin and Naoko. Please introduce yourselves, your role in Densho, and your part in the Koseki program.
Okay, I can go first. Hello, everyone. My name is Caitlin Oyakun. I'm the archives director here at Densho. I've been here going on, I can't remember now, it's like 13 years at this point, and I kind of oversee the archives team, which includes our digitization team, oral history program, and this Japanese family research program. So that's my background. I have a personal interest in the incarceration as my family was incarcerated, and Naoko has very kindly helped me with my own Koseki research. And I have done quite a bit of genealogical research in the past, I don't know, 5 years. So yeah, that's my background. Naoko, do you want to go?
Yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Naoko Tanabe, and I'm Densho's Japanese researcher and a translator. And Caitlin and I launched this new program of Koseki retrieval and translation back in 2023, like at the kind of a later part of 2023. And it's been pretty popular. We've been having fun, doing some research retrieving Koseki from Japan, translating it. And I'm excited to be here to talk about it today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you both. And then we have Christy, our marketing manager, behind the scenes. So thank you, Christy, for the Zoom support. And again, I'm Cassandra Ishida, I'm Densho's development manager. So that's our team here today. And I will pass it to Caitlin just to dive a little deeper into why Densho has started to dig into the Koseki program, launching it with Caitlin and Naoko's leadership and the overall kind of purpose and priorities.
So again, thanks everybody for being here. I see some names that I recognize, so hello to everybody. Yeah, so the history behind the Koseki program, I mean, as you probably know, Densho started out as an oral history project, and we have developed, a really robust digital repository and encyclopedia and maps and all sorts of programs that have helped people understand Japanese American history, specifically with the incarceration in mind, but generally from immigration to current day. And I think it was like 2018 or 2019, we started to think about other services that we could provide to the community and just kind of like what made sense and how to thank the community for supporting us for, almost 30 years now. And it really made sense to us that we do a little bit more with Japanese American genealogy and family history research. So much of what we provide right now kind of links in with that type of research. You may not find your specific family member in the digital repository, but there's so much contextual information that you can learn that will help you learn more about your own families that it just kind of made sense. So our goal was to kind of start this family history program with the highlight of it really being this Koseki program. We've been lucky enough to have Naoko working at Densho for, a long time. And we haven't taken advantage of her language skills as much. And so we knew that Naoko as, born and raised in Japan. And, are you a trained interpreter specifically?
I was.
Were at one point.
Yes.
So Naoko is able to read quite a bit of the kanji and translate a lot of things. So we thought this would be a perfect opportunity to provide kind of a genealogical service for our Japanese American community members who might be more interested in learning about their family going back to Japan. And we know from my own personal experience and from anecdotal experience that, a lot of Japanese Americans cannot speak or read or write the language. And it really creates a barrier to getting those Japanese records, the most important of which, or the easiest to get of which, is the Koseki, which is the family register, which is the legal document in Japan held for all families that records all vital records. So birth, marriage, death, divorce, that sort of thing. But so with Naoko's help and with some of our contacts in Japan's help, we are now able to get in touch with the local governments in Japan to help families retrieve their Koseki. And we'll go into kind of the samples more in a little bit, but we really just wanted to provide this service not to make money off of it, but really to just help the community. So we try and keep it as affordable as possible, and knowing that there aren't many services out there that really can help with this sort of thing. We try to get to as many of you as possible. Right now, it's basically just Naoko and what she can handle on any given day. So we have a limit to the number of Koseki that we can request and translate in any given month, but we are working hard on that. So that's a little preview or wrap up of the Koseki program.
Thanks, Caitlin. And I will pass it to Naoko to share a little bit about what we're hearing from folks who have participated in the program so far and what we've been able to do together with our small but mighty team. Go ahead, Naoko, and just let me know when you want me to change slides.
Okay, so we've got a little collection of like messages from our clients, and I think so far everybody we served has been pleased with what we could provide and what we could obtain as well. As Caitlin mentioned, it takes some little steps to request the Koseki copies, and like a payment needs to be arranged in Japan, and so it takes some effort, and we are pleased to provide that kind of service. And so I'm not really reading all the comments, but we got a lot of comments, saying that it would be, it was great to know. And what Koseki does is to kind of shed a light to on your past family members, beyond like coming over here. And what people were saying is that, oh, I didn't know about this. I didn't know my great grandfather has a sibling who immigrated to Korea, or, oh, I didn't know my grandmother was the second wife. Some discoveries, and also we offered some stories to your family. So yeah, a lot of people are just really pleased to get to know. And Koseki has a lot of information. It's pretty dry, but still you can kind of put together some the lives that your past family members lived. So yeah, I think this is a kind of interesting project for a lot of people. So we yeah, last year we probably retrieved pretty close to like 30 sets of Koseki, well, 30 clients Koseki retrieval, and we translated more Koseki into English. And yeah, people were actually pleased again. And some Kosekis are very hard to read. It's the old style Koseki is still available, and now they are digitized, so we can have a copy of them. But they were handwritten, and sometimes with tiny fonts with an old styled Chinese characters or old styled numbers. So some Kosekis are pretty hard to read. So we are again pleased to provide this type of translation service. And yes, again. So yes, we are currently having a little bit of wait list, but this is the second year for us to work on this project, and we are hoping to kind of speed up our process as we progress and serve more clients this year.
Thanks, Marco. And could you share a little bit more about the Koseki history? You started.
So Koseki started when a Meiji restoration took place. So before the Meiji restoration, it's a shogun era with samurai and everything. and so the family history and family registers are not centralized. It is usually it was locally managed by like temples or village leaders or some kind of a regional politician leaders. And after the Meiji restoration took place, it started to centralize, and it depends on how long a family has been in the same spot, but sometimes it goes back into like 1830s or 20s. So it could go back pretty, go back by, like 100, 200 years. And modern Koseki has a different style, but old Koseki is still available. And old Koseki is very household centric, with the head of a household listed with the address and everybody within the household. So for example, if his parents were still alive, his parents were listed, his siblings, his wife, his children, maybe nephews, and maybe even cousins. So it depends on how big the family is, but once you retrieve a set of Koseki, it gives you a lot of information about your family. And this is a sample of Koseki, and I believe this is Caitlin's families. Yeah, and as you can see, it's, yes, handwritten, and what you can see at the bottom is the name of each family member. And the upper part gives you some vital records like birth, marriage, maybe divorce, which happened more often than we thought it would, and death, and some addresses, and adoption, or some, those information.
Thanks, Naoko.
Okay, thank you.
And if you have anything to add about general Koseki history, great to hear. And if not, we'll pass it to you to share a deeper dive into your own family Koseki to help folks understand kind of what this looks like as you receive the support.
I think that's probably it. I mean, there's conversations going around about Koseki right now to begin with, right, Naoko? I mean, there's some concern that Koseki that are old enough are getting destroyed. And there are certain types of Koseki that had like social status on them, which are no longer available for
Right.
requests. So if you are
Right.
lucky enough to have an old Koseki copy in your possession from like the 1940s or something, 20s,
Yeah.
it sometimes will list like commoner or samurai,
Right.
or even lower status, I believe sometimes, although I haven't seen one of those. Have you?
Yeah, I have seen a few of them, but no, what happened is that when the Koseki was compiled for the first time, it was still a old society going, and we had like classes in the Japanese society. So it lists the class like a commoner, or like a shizoku, means like you are a samurai class. And so, and plus it's got more personal information, like sometimes criminal history, or maybe your mistress, and mistress is children. A lot of information was listed on this particular type of year of Koseki. So it's not available anymore. It was like sealed by the law, and it's not available for us anymore. And I believe at least a part of them has been destroyed. And Koseki has retention period. So all the Koseki isn't really required by the law to be retained anymore because the retention period is over. But Koseki is still managed locally by a local government agency. So it depends on an agency. Usually they save it for in some form, and a lot of older Kosekis are digitized now and saved and still available, but the oldest Koseki is not. And Koseki style is simplified now. So now the modern Koseki, the latest style is just the head of a household, and and a spouse and unmarried children. That's it. And parents if they are still around. So it's gonna be it's a lot simpler.
All right, thank you both. I saw a question that we'll get to in the Q&A, so thank you, Carol, for your question. And then before we get into Q&A, I'm just going to pass it to Caitlin for a little bit just to do a deeper dive into what a family Koseki looks like and Caitlin's own research.
Yeah, so before I share my screen, just so you can kind of see in the, oh, can you bring that
Oh,
back
sorry.
up?
That was too fast.
Too fast. If you kind of look at the background picture in this slide, that is my family's Koseki, just so that you can get like a visual of what they look like. Because if I'm now going to share my screen,
Thanks, Caitlin.
once you go on. All right, so you can see my screen now. And basically that image that you saw when Naoko does her translations, she does them in Excel because it kind of works out in that kind of column row situation. And it translates over to what you see here. So this is my dad's side of the family, the Oyas. And this is just like standard for all Koseki. So it will have the older head of the household up top and the current head of the household. And then different family members, depending on who is registered within that household at the time that this Koseki was created. Then there's like relation and also just various administrative comments about that person. And the Oya one is 5 pages long, and you can see not only Tsunetaro was my great grandfather, and you can see here within his household, he had more than just like his wife and children. You can see his grandmother, his parents, his siblings. We keep going over. Sometimes you get extra pages, but you can see his wives, his children, that sort of thing. So this is kind of, if you have already participated in the Koseki program, or if you would like to in the future, Naoko does a translation for every sheet that you have, and then you will get something like this. It provides so much great information. Again, it's a little dry, but if you really read through it and go into it further, you can pull out a lot of really interesting information. And what happens is I will create, from Naoko's translations, I create a family tree and then just like a genealogical summary for the information that is found in all of the Koseki. So that was just one Koseki, but actually there's more Koseki for the Oya family. And also I have my Kikuchi side of the family. I think there's like 10 different Koseki, which all have multiple pages, and you have to kind of like coalesce them all into one digestible piece. Anyway, so this is my tree. It goes all the way back to, oh, I don't know, this is probably late 1700s would be Rikichi up here. Not everybody's goes back that far, but some do, which goes, and then I've included my own personal family, like my dad is Alan Oya. So I've included some extra family in here that don't show up on the Koseki, obviously. But what I then do is go by each generation. So I just find like the furthest back generation I can get to on the Koseki. And you can see here Naoko will nicely provide the different options for names because a lot of times the characters could be a number of different names depending on how they decided that they wanted to, how we've translated them into like a Romanized version. So those are there. And then the children, in this case, this is a case of I don't know even what she would have been, great grandmother was the only child, I believe. And so they actually adopted in her husband, who then took the Oya family name so that they could continue the Oya line. And then the further down you get, the more information you get. So usually it includes their birth, their marriage, their death. I try to include immigration issue, like immigration information, which can be inferred from the Koseki. It doesn't tell you when a person left Japan for the US, but you can tell they did if their children were born in California or Washington or something like that. So there's an inferred immigration at a certain point in that Koseki. So yeah, and then I just go through and list off all of the different family members that I can find, or in this case, that I know. So just to go back here to the translation, just like some of the interesting things. I mean, grandmother, I don't see very often. She must have been pretty long lived to have been in this Koseki, but you can find things about name changes. So Tsunetaro was actually born Tsune Saburo and legally changed it at one point. I think there's a divorce in here, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, one of his sisters married and then divorced and then married again. So this is actually pretty common. You see it quite a bit. I can show you what it looks like for a US. Let's see, where are we at? It might be down here. Down here. Oh, here. So Keiko is one of my dad's cousins. You can see here that she was born in Tacoma. Sometimes there's an address that you can get for where they were born. Sometimes it's more general, like a county. It's really just kind of depends on the government agency and what they collected in the Koseki. So yeah, that's kind of a visual kind of to help you out in terms of being able to picture what a Koseki translated is, what it will provide for you, and then if we're doing your translation, what you would end up with in terms of this. And I will say, like this Koseki report and all of the Koseki reports, most of them I create based off of all of the information in the Koseki, but a lot of the people, some of the family members in the Koseki then go on to have a lot of US records because, as you might guess, if you're here in the US and you're going back to Japan, there's probably some family members who immigrated to the US at some point. And then you'll start to be able to find passenger manifests, birth records, death records. If they were incarcerated, you would find WRA records, which could then fill in and supplement this genealogical information. So this is kind of a bare bones starting point for what you would do, which you could then fill out with more information. And sometimes it also helps you to figure out which name was actually used by that person. I've come across a couple where Naoko has listed a number of names that it could be. And then if you go to like ancestry.com or family search, you can search for that person and you can see which name they actually chose to use. So that I think is all, unless there's anything else. I think I'll stop sharing though. So Cassandra, you can pull your slides back up.
Yeah, well, we've actually made it to the Q&A part, so
Okay.
just open discussion. If folks have any questions, we can always pull up a slide and go back to it, or if there's just anything coming up. I have some questions prepared because I'm interested to learn too, but I thought, Carol, I'll go ahead and read that question out loud for Naoko and Caitlin. So Carol said, I was lucky to obtain both Issei grandparents Koseki in Japan and had them translated by a college student raised in Japan, but some parts were difficult. Is it possible to check the translation? Kind of double checking translation that's already been done.
Yes, we can check the translation. Sometimes it takes as long as translating the whole thing. Sometimes checking is pretty time consuming. So, but yes, we can do that.
That's great. And then Carol, let us know if you have any follow-up questions, and folks feel free to put questions in the chat or in the Q&A function. We'll get to them either way. But I'll go ahead and start with some of my questions while audience questions come in. So I appreciated, we didn't read all of the quotes, but it was very nice. The clients who participated had a lot of positive feedback and appreciation for Naoko and Caitlin. So thank you both for leading this service and kind of creating this opportunity that meets the unique needs of our Japanese American community. Some of the quotes that stood out to me talked about for people who are interested but don't know where to start, that this is such a value and much needed resource. So what do people need to get started if you're, just hearing about this and you're interested, and don't already have a Koseki? Like, what are some of the first steps in general um, for people who are earlier in that research?
The tricky thing to look around for is the registered address in Japan. Because Koseki is managed locally, we need to find the right government agency to talk to request your Koseki copies. And what you can look for is like a passenger's manifest. Sometimes has like a registered address listed, especially if people are going through like a port of Seattle, right, Caitlin? Yeah, and if people went through like a port of Honolulu, Consul General of Japan in Honolulu has a collection of immigration cards that you can request a copy of. And the immigration card has a Japanese address. And you can also ask for like alien file, and sometimes they have like a copy of old Japanese passports. So there are a lot, and Caitlin, you probably have more suggestions. So there are numerous places that you can visit to look for this address.
Seeing if I can pull up a copy of what it looks like for mine. Ancestry is being very weird right now, though. Yeah, I mean, honestly, the passenger manifest is the easiest way to find the address. But sometimes what you have to do is it might not be on like the direct ancestor line. So I guess we should say you can only request Koseki for your direct ancestor. So you have to be able to prove your lineage backwards to that person. So in my case, I had to give them my birth certificate, my dad's birth certificate, both of my grandparents' birth or death certificates. And I think that was enough because the death certificate showed my grandparents' parents' names, which then tied to the address.
Right.
So you have to be able to do that lineage backwards. And then you also have to have the kanji for the last names.
Yeah,
So
sometimes they can look around without kanji, but it depends on an agent. So yeah, so the documentation to prove your lineage, just you have to draw a straight line from you to your like a great grandfather, and connecting the dots. And yeah, death or birth certificates are probably the easier ones to locate. You can also look for a copy of census or even a passenger's manifest sometimes has like some is sufficient enough to prove the family relationship. And so that's what we need. And then we will find which government agency we need to talk to. So what happens is that now once you have sufficient documentation, we will translate the US documents into Japanese, and those Japanese government offices do not want to have anything emailed to them. So we print out everything, stuff them into an envelope, send them over to Japan over the ocean, and then they will be
I didn't know that.
they also, it's cash. You got to have cash or a money order. They're not. But I'm just sharing my screen right now just to give you an example. So this is the passenger manifest for Shizuko is my grandmother, Shigenori is my grandfather. This is when they came over after they got married. So this is page 1. If you click over to page 2, you can see here under the name of the person in Japan. Here's her brother, and there's the number and the address. So when you find this, if you see this anywhere, this is what you need. But unfortunately, a lot of times you get like, so I don't even know what this is, Kenjo. If it comes without the number, it's not as great. But yeah, Naoko, what is that, Kenjo?
Kenjo, Father
Yeah.
Kenjo, huh? I don't know where Father Kenjo.
But Naoko will take this document and translate the necessary parts of it into Japanese so that the government agency can then read it themselves.
Very interesting. Well, we have another, I think we answered Marie's question of what basic information do you have to get started, which sounds like that's quite a bit to even have that starting point. And then just a comment from June. I'm Sansei and travel to Japan at this time in my life is difficult. I did not think I would ever get any information about my family in Japan, so thank you for starting this service. Thank you, June. And thank you for all of our history keepers. Like, this is the kind of work that we're able to do thanks to our donors and support. So thank you all for your part and just Densho's ongoing work in supporting us, but allowing us to do programs like this. Another question we had talked about is sometimes folks already have the Koseki, but then just need it translated. I think kind of going back to Carol's question earlier of double checking translation and having Densho as a trusted Koseki retrieval support, but also for translation. So for folks who have it already and just need it translated, what would be the next steps for translation support?
You can email us, and what we are doing is to create like a Google shared folder, so you can just scan what you already have and upload the files. And we have a short waiting list for translation, but it's moving pretty quickly. So we will contact you when we are ready to work on the project.
Wonderful. And then please add if folks have any additional questions or comments for Caitlin and Naoko. We're happy to have the chance to sit down with our Koseki team. Another thing we were talking about just in planning this webinar, we were curious to hear what's your favorite part of doing this program? Clearly it's a lot of care and tedious little details that go into it, and very time intensive, but it's been so interesting to hear you all talk about kind of what you're observing or even just the impact it has for folks who, like June, are saying thank you for helping make this information available. So anything that comes up for either of you of just kind of your favorite part of doing this program since you started it.
Naoko, do you want to go first?
Caitlin and I always said that the divorce rate is surprisingly high. No, back then, especially like in Meiji era, all the marriages were arranged, and it's like between those two families. So even I thought it was like very firmed up because it's not really an individual thing, it's a family thing. So it's if two families made an arrangement, that's it, you can't just get out of it. But that's not true. A lot of people are divorced, and so yeah, that's kind of a surprising discovery for me. And like my personal Koseki, actually I retrieved all the family Koseki for myself, but I didn't even take a close look at them, so I need to. But one thing I found out is like my grandma had like 11 siblings that I didn't know. But no, she had like 11 siblings, but 5 of them died very young. And that's like, some things she never talked about, but she was one of the oldest, so she probably remembered, she probably were fully aware of like her siblings' death, and like 5 of them. And it's kind of sad. And some things that's the discovery. That's something you just didn't know. So there are some like a happy and surprising and sad discoveries you can make.
And we're lucky because, I mean, most people, because of the privacy laws in Japan, it's not like people can just, it's not like scholars or sociologists or anthropologists can just study a whole range of Koseki, right? So But as Naoko and I have been able to like look at so many of them, and of course we're under, you know, we ourselves are not going to share the information that we found out about these families for privacy reasons and the family's reasons. But in general, the overall impression we get is different, I think, from what we both thought going into it. Like even with my own Koseki, you see like divorces and adoptions and yeah, deaths and honestly even illegitimate births, like sons who are then, you know, they're born out of wedlock, but then they're accepted into the Koseki at a certain point. And it's really fascinating, honestly. And I think we both feel very lucky to even have the opportunity to kind of do this type of like research. And just it's fascinating to me as a person who's into history and archives and genealogy. um, but yeah, it's actually, I find it very enjoyable, and just being able to like pick through the dry Koseki, and then as you write about it, you get like the fuller picture. And as you're going through it, you're like, huh, that's weird. But you kind of draw it together. So I've really enjoyed that about it. Something else, but it's gone now.
Thank you both for sharing. I saw in the chat, Carol mentioned a tip. Nara in Seattle has a passenger manifest for San Francisco as well as Seattle. And then Carol followed up with, what about temple records? Are those available? Is that something you can speak to?
Yeah, temple records. It's probably very hard to have access to temple records. I think temples are were playing a pretty big part of keeping records of the people in the village or the people in the region. And it's sometimes hard because there are so many temples in Japan. It's hard to locate the right temple that your family is related to. So that's a challenge. And even though you do know which temple to go to, no, that information is protected by the law because it's personal information. So I don't know. I've never tried it, but I don't know what kind of documentation you need to provide to get access to the temple record. And also, temple records are probably harder to read. So the Koseki is like an official government form, but temple record, it's no, you never know what you have. So it's probably really hard to read and translate as well.
There are land records too, though, right? I mean, those are equally hard to get and expensive, I believe, to request.
Land records, we never tried, but we probably should because it's probably a little easier because it's through the government again. So yeah.
But I think they might be pricey. I've heard of a different case where someone was going to try and pull the land records, but the cost of it is high. And so it's high because actually requesting Koseki is actually a pretty reasonably priced thing. It's not that expensive once you find them. It's, you know, $20, right? It doesn't get much over 100, I don't think, even with shipping. But I think the land records might be more expensive. But if you can hire a researcher in Japan, there are other avenues to research. I know there's you can get access to passport records in a government office that if you can read it, you can go in there and look through all those passport records. Microfilms. But you have to be able to read it and be there, which is very niche and hard to do from here in the United States.
And there are some private companies in Japan who would do a lot of digging, and not only like requesting Koseki, but who would like making blind calls to find out who is still living in that region, who are related to you, or like finding out which temple to go to for more information. So there are some companies doing that, but it's almost like a detective work. and I don't know the success rate. Yes. So Yeah, but yeah, there are some companies providing that kind of service in Japan.
Yeah, well, thank you to our Densho detectives and for sharing a little bit about some of those potential leads. And then we had another question from Laura. Do you think this Koseki research can lead us to meeting or communicating with living relatives in Japan, perhaps relatives we didn't know about before? I don't know if there's been any examples or if you have any thoughts on how doing that research and looking at the Koseki might help us connect with current relatives in Japan.
So Koseki is Koseki has is kind of a family-centric record, and when the head of the household passes away, it's closed and it's no longer updated. So actually, it's easier when you retrieve Koseki. It's easier to get past information, but it's harder to get current information because once this head of the household is gone, it's closed. So if you get, for example, your grandparent, grandparents Koseki, when your grandparents are gone, that's it. So you do not get information about people who are still around. So that's actually a little harder to get connected. And I think, Caitlin, your Koseki has probably a few people who might be still around, right? Like I can't remember if it's Kikuchi or Oye.
I think so I was looking at the Oya one recently, and the latest date that I saw was 1970 when my great grandmother passed away
Oh.
in Japan, and it gave the address of like where she passed away in 1970. And it's kind of dependent on the family and the area, I feel like. So so my family's from Ehime-ken, in a fairly small fishing / rural community, and they were there the whole time. And I mean, we know that there are people there, which we have contacts with outside of finding the Koseki. But looking at it and seeing that consistently everybody in the Koseki has been in that area, and the last known place that they were was that area, I feel like you could probably then go with like that village and that name, and somebody might know somebody, and that's more how you would have to track it. But I've also seen one where people are like city dwellers. You've got like Tokyo, Osaka, like things like that, where people are moving around, and in that case it would be really hard to find. That's kind of not really a helpful. I mean, I'm sure that didn't provide you with the information you want. We have had people contact us trying to find current like ancestors to do something with, and it's kind of like we can't really find that information. So
yeah, and as Caitlin mentioned, we need to be a direct descendant to ask for Koseki copies. So we know even like you have your cousins or your cousin's daughter around still there. We can't really request for their request their information. So that kind of makes it harder for us to get current information.
Thank you. And we're getting ready to wrap up the Q&A. So if there's any closing questions or comments, please feel free to add that. Oh, I see another comment from Carol. There's also a Facebook group, Japanese Family History, started by Martinus Wolf, a Mormon researcher who lived in Japan for a long time. Sounds like they will help as well. And Carol met a third cousin who lives in BC who posted something about the island where Carol's grandmother was from. So it looks like there's some other ways that people are connecting with relatives.
yeah, and there's another Japanese American heritage Facebook group that's run by, it's more local, by Biff Brigman and someone else, but I can't remember the name of it. But there, people post questions and get advice in there as well. So that's another area that you could go to look for help.
Great. Thank you so much. Again, if there's any closing questions or comments, we've really enjoyed the discussion, and I mentioned earlier, but it's just been really moving to see kind of the words of appreciation coming in, where people have talked about it being a dream come true to kind of unlock that history and understanding their own family roots and records. And so just a lot of appreciation to Naoko and Caitlin for kind of leaping into this and helping provide what's clearly been a much needed and beneficial service. I know Christy's sharing in the chat. Thank you, Christy. We have our website that summarizes a little bit of this. This was definitely a deeper dive, but a little bit about the program. And then if anyone's interested, or if you know a friend or family member that's interested, that Densho could maybe be the answer to their Koseki or translation questions, please feel free to share that form or fill it out. Marie said this was very useful. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to learning more about my family, especially those who are still living. And Carol said Densho rocks. Thank you, Carol. You rock too. And all of
Carol.
we really appreciate this work is done from a place of deep kind of care and connection to our community, and wanting to make sure everyone can understand and access our history. So I always appreciate learning so much from our researchers and archivists, and it means a lot to us that there's a community of folks who are interested in and supporting, and also share that passion for history. So thank you for being part of our History Keepers. Any other questions? I'm going to go ahead and share slides again, but please drop in the chat if there's anything else coming up or any questions for Caitlin and Naoko. So again, just can't thank all of you enough. From all of us at Densho, thank you for being part of our History Keeper Society. Your monthly giving support is just really crucial for us to continue to sustain our work and to grow our work. And like Caitlin mentioned early on, of course, we're wanting to cover the costs of running this program, and so we're trying out the different kind of fee structure, but ultimately it's to give back to our supporters, and seeing that there was this need for the language access, and really to have that historical perspective that Densho brings, and just being a trusted part of the community that people know, like, okay, this will be an accurate translation and this will be kind of trusted historical context. So for all of those reasons, the support from donors like you are so appreciated and so crucial. So we're just grateful to spend our morning with you, and for the ongoing support. To just a reminder to save the date. We're trying to do our History Keeper hours, getting together a couple times a year, probably once every quarter, to keep learning and connecting, and really just as a thank you to our History Keepers, but also that this is why we do this work, and it's just nice to connect with like-minded folks and people who share our love and passion for preserving and teaching history. So please remember on your calendars, and we'll send reminders too. In April, we'll be sitting down with some of our Densho interns. Um, Folks may not know, but we have a really great internship program, and a lot of our current staff and leadership came up through our internship program. So there's a deep history of Densho internships, really paving the way for the next generation of digital archivists. And we want to hear from folks, where are they now? What are they up to? And a little bit more of that aspect of Densho's work. In July, we're going to sit down with our oral history team to hear a little bit more about our oral history narrators and that work to preserve history, and I think what we're particularly well known for, the clips that you can see and access through the Densho digital repository, where we're sitting down with survivors and descendants to hear history in their own words. So we'll be hearing from the team who has been working to capture those stories and preserve them from the oral history program. And then in the fall, we're excited to sit down. Some of our staff and also a lot of our partners really focus on kind of memory, and how do we hold and transfer intergenerational memory, and kind of the cultural memory scholarship that's in dialogue with Densho's work for Japanese American history. So those are some of the conversations to come. But in the meantime, just wanted to thank you all again for your support, for your shared passion for preserving history, and for taking the time to sit down with us, learn a little bit more, and Carol shared a lot of great tips. So if there's other resources we can pass along to others too, we're always happy to share that with our supporters. So please stay in touch for any Koseki questions like we shared in the chat. There's more information on our website, but you can always reach out directly to Caitlin or Naoko for the translation or Koseki program. And then for myself, I support with our History Keepers. So if you have any questions about the monthly giving membership or benefits, or just want to hear more about what we're up to at Densho and the impact of your support, that's always the best part of my day, connecting with our supporters. So that's us. And then follow along our social media and website, which Christy and our team do a great job sharing resources and updates there. So I'll go ahead and pause and see, Naoko, if there's anything closing to add. I'm checking if there's any last comments. I think we answered. Oh, and we had a thank you from Nick. Thank you to History Keepers. And thank you from Laura. Thank you for such an informative presentation. Laura will definitely read more about the amazing service and spread the news. So thank you all for the kind words. Naoko, anything to add as we
Yeah, thank you very much, everybody, to be here today. And please feel free to email Caitlin, email me if you have any more questions, or if you need any more information, we will be happy to talk to you later too. So thank you very much.
Thank you all. Take care. Appreciate you.
Bye.